All right, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and discussion. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker. Kelenne Blake-Shelton is, I'm so sorry, Blake-Fallon. What did I say that? Because isn't he a singer? Oh my God. Maybe I should have more coffee. Apologies. Is a health advocate, creative, and a Black academic from Trinidad and Tobago, based in Austin, Texas. She has been involved with Black Mamas Community Collective, or Black Mamas ATX, in various roles since 2018, and now serves as the executive director. As a creative, she does visual, and performance art, as well as writing, including poetry and screenwriting. She also considers herself a Black academic and is a former professor at Houston-Tillotson University and a current doctoral student of public health at Johns Hopkins University, concentrating in health equity and social justice. Living in the intersections as a Black immigrant woman, everything she does involves working creatively with vulnerable communities, disrupting false hierarchies, and creating spaces for those communities to assert their unique voices, perspectives, power, and in so creating a better world. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, or whatever time of day it is for folks who are online. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. That's the last line of an Audre Lorde poem that resonates so much with me, for me, as a Black woman, that I had it tattooed on my arm. My name is Kelenne, and I am the executive director of Black Mamas ATX, an organization that is founded and run by Black women in Central Texas, so that we and our community can survive and thrive in an environment and a system that devalues us and endangers our lives. I kind of want to start off actually telling a personal story, just because that is how we human, is by being human and living lives. So for me, 2022 was actually supposed to be my year. I got this job. My job as executive director of Black Mamas ATX started January 1st, 2022. And I love this organization. I've been involved in it in various ways, as a volunteer, as a community organizer, as leadership team, all the different things. Board member, so many ways I've been involved because I love what, our organization, my community, and what we do, right? And in addition to that, at the start of this year, I was actually in really good shape. I was fit and fine. I was exercising, I was doing martial arts, I was eating well, I was seeing a therapist. I was solid. Professionally, physically, mentally, I was in a good place. And to top it all off, I got pregnant. And that was my first pregnancy, first time in my life, exciting for me. Even though I've been working in this world of birth workers and supporting Black moms, Black pregnant folks, I hadn't been pregnant yet, right? And so that gave me a different type of perspective shift and connection and sense of belonging. And I'm lucky because I constantly work with experts, with doulas, I have midwife friends and surrounded by birth advocates and all of this. This is the world I was in when I found out I was pregnant, right? So I was ready. Thought I was ready. But then one day I woke up bleeding. And I called my midwife friend who came over 6 o'clock in the morning, sat at my bedside, put me on bed rest, gave me my instructions. The few folks that knew what was going on formed like a tight circle of community that held me very closely and sent food, because eating is important, and making sure your friend is eating when they can't move, when they're on bed rest, is important, right? So I had that wonderful community taking care of me. My neighbor came downstairs to help me around the house. And all of that made me feel held, even though I was going through something, right? So despite all the best efforts, I ended up having a miscarriage. I survived the pregnancy, but my baby did not. And with all the advantages that I had, well-educated, working in this field, surrounded by experts, just healthy, which, the timing was pristine for me. Timing was good in terms of what I had control over, right? But I could not find a black OB. Now, it's not that there's no black OB in Austin. There's like 2. But I could not find one who was taking patients. So I was encountering the same barriers that many of our community members face, right? Couldn't find a black OB, so I could get that culturally competent care. And when I did find an OB that at least our doulas trusted a little bit, I couldn't get a prenatal appointment until what would have been my second trimester, which was already too late. So that plus wear and tear on my body, likely because of chronic stress due to living in a world with systemic racism and microaggressions and all of that, being in a black body in Texas, and in the US is not something that is controllable on an individual level, right? So this experience, I had all of these things lined up, but it did not prevent me from having a negative pregnancy outcome as a black woman. It did not prevent me from having some of the same barriers that we work to mitigate, right, in our community. And I say all that because you hear these statistics, and when you talk about the statistics, you talk about for all black women, this is the disparity in Texas. The last bit of information we have for this is the disparity is from a 2017 report by our public health, Austin Public Health, all right? That covers Austin and Travis County. That report was pulling, because if you know anything about reports from the government, they pull from information from years before. So that 2017 report was pulling from 2012, 13, maybe 14, right? And at that point, maternal mortality for the state of Texas was black women experiencing death 2.3 times at a higher rate than their white counterparts in the state of Texas. And in Austin, it was 2.5 times more. So progressive Austin, blue dot in a red, whatever, C, whatever you used to call it. Something was going on. It was even where those numbers were even worse than statewide, right? Now, I'll come back to the data and how old that information is later on in my presentation. But it was one thing, or it is one thing, to know these things intellectually, right? That there's these disparities, and these are the stats, and socioeconomics doesn't matter, lifestyle doesn't matter. This is the case. When you hear about it, you learn about it, hopefully it drives you. But when you have an understanding of it in your body, when you are a black birth giver or birth capable person in a place where this is the story for many people like you, then there is a serious desire to survive, right? And even knowing these stats is a stressor, right? But not knowing it does not make you any safer. So that is why, even more so for me personally, the work of Black Mamas ATX and the community we've built has always been important, but is, so vitally meaningful for me, right? What we do. So we are a Texas nonprofit that provides culturally congruent birth support for free for the Black community in and around Austin. So we call it the Austin 5-county metro area, right? So Austin's in Travis County, but because of gentrification, the Black population in Austin is constantly decreasing. And where we're moving out to, the outskirts of the city and the counties surrounding it, which include Hayes, Williamson, Bastrop, and Caldwell. I always forget one, so I had to look. And it's like a toss-up which one I'm going to forget. But yeah, so that's what we do, and that's how we respond to our community. We can't keep it in the city because the environment is one that drives out our community. And if we're trying to reach our community, there's no way we could just work in one county. Meanwhile, if you want to know what culturally congruent means, that's what culturally congruent means. That's our entire team plus me. And our team, by the way, this team that you're looking at that serves 5 counties is increased this year by 50%. And our doula staff increased by 100%, which means that initially there were 4 people doing this work with 2 doulas, right, and 2 admins, and now there's 4 doulas. So there's 6 of us doing this work. It's funny, but that's how it often is with grassroots, small, Black-led nonprofit organizations, is that you're doing the most with so little. And you're still making an impact. But we shouldn't have to do it with so little. And that comes back to this theme of enhancing resilience, right? The work we do is survival work. What I say we do at Black Mamas ATX, we do both survival work and structural work. And I'll tell you a little bit about both as we go on. But that survival work is the work you do in your community so that you and your people, whatever your people is, right? Whatever that community of interest for you is, that survival work is what keeps you alive and doing as well as possible while the environment you're in is still messed up, right? So that's the survival work. The structural work is changing the environment that's messed up so that it doesn't harm you and continue to cause harm. So you have to really do both. And a lot of times it's easy to get stuck in the survival work. But it's important to do both. So the survival work that we do, I'm just going to have a few slides listing with some visuals there. We provide free doula support for anyone who is Black and pregnant in Central Texas. We prefer to start working with folks at 28 weeks gestation or less, so in their first or second trimester. And we really do that because we found that having more time has been more effective and impactful. So that doesn't mean we turn folks away. I'll tell you more about the importance of community. But that's how we work, and that's the eligibility criteria. Socioeconomics, there's no percent poverty level or anything as part of the eligibility, because it's all Black birth givers who are experiencing this disparity, right? It's no first child, it's none of that. Literally just gotta be Black and pregnant and in Central Texas. We have to be able to reach you. All right? So our assisted doulas, they work with someone from the time they find out they're pregnant and get enrolled in our program through our doulas attend the births, and they stay with that client for 1 year postpartum. That first 6 weeks postpartum, they're having postpartum visits every week, either virtually or in person, depending on what the needs are. And they're also checking in thereafter at consistent intervals. So that is one of the that is the bread and butter of what we do, if you want to call it that. That's the survival work. It's very individual, right? What we also do, which we are shifting from, but what we have been doing are monthly sister circle support groups that our doulas would also run. And that one is open not just to clients, but to anyone who is a mother, birth giver, parent with the uterus, right? And so that's the first and core part. The other aspect is social support and wellness, mental health. We have searched out Black women who are mental health professionals, who are counselors, therapists, right? Who have perinatal mental health certification or expertise. And I'm telling you, that search is still going. And where we live is a needle in a haystack to find them. But so far we have found 3 unicorns. And we've talked to those unicorns, and we have made agreements with them so that any of our clients who are receiving doula support, who express a desire for mental health support, or who are screened and show that they need mental health support at any point during pregnancy or postpartum, they have access to, they can choose from any of those 3 that we have the agreements with and go to them for care and never see a bill. No one ever asks for their insurance. We take care of that. All right? And we don't have limits on it. This is our first year of doing it like that. But it is so extremely crucial. And of course, because we are our community and our lived experiences impact how we do our work and what we do, this is the one thing that we have been able to have that is beneficial whether or not someone has a positive pregnancy outcome. So if someone experiences a miscarriage or a stillbirth, they still have a year postpartum to get that free mental health support. So that is one of the important aspects of what we do that our doulas facilitate. I mentioned the support groups. We have this whole plan for next year. It's a calendar. We're very proud. Well, it's not done yet, but we're still proud, working on it, right? We have workshops planned. We have something every month, right? So we have workshops or support groups or mamas meetups. Our mamas meetups, different from your mommy's meetups. I love the, synergy there. Our mamas meetups are literally go out in the park and do something fun. Yeah. But we're having spaces where people get education, support once a month, right? And we're also focusing on the building of the community. And that's where our mamas meetup, events, family days, these sorts of events come in, right? We have the educational stuff, we have the doula work, but here's something that people forget. Interventions are nice and helpful and are evidence-based, but another bit of evidence is that having a supportive community improves your pregnancy outcomes. And having a supportive community starts with having a community, having friends, meeting people who are in a similar part in life, right? So that is one of our initiatives that we're pushing and hoping to build more of, is expanding what we call our sister circle support groups to a sister circle community, where there's the education, coming to learn something is, there's an agenda. The agenda is to learn, right? But brunch and paint, you come to the park, you pick up your supplies, and you sit there and you paint. That's the agenda. That's a different agenda. And it's, supporting people, chatting, and just meeting friends, making friends, and building community in a way that once there, you can always find them back. Even if you didn't exchange numbers that first time, you might see them at the next Mama's Meetup. Or you might see them on the online membership space that we're building. So there's ways that we are working to build community, and these communities are not exclusive. We have a lot of wonderful people doing this sort of work. We're kind of an interesting haven in Central Texas and Austin. And our community can connect with Mama Sana, Vibrant Woman community, could connect with any of the other communities and build just a mycelium network. Anyone who's an herb fungus nerd, I don't know, a mycelium network among us because being in a gentrified space, we are spread out. And one study recently showed that, Black people are moving into Austin too for these tech jobs and stuff, right? And then they leave not too long after because they cannot find the rest of the Black community, and they do not get to build a sense of community and belonging, right? So that community building is extremely important. Anything else there? No, I don't think so. And actually, back to the community building before I go on to the last part, or the next part. A part of community building that we engage in is a community of organizations that do this work. Black Mamas ATX is a founding member of the Maternal Health Equity Collaborative. We have in the room another founding member of the collaborative, Darlene Turner of Healing Hands Community Doula Project. So that collaborative is made up of 4 doula support organizations. That's why I say we're a strange little haven, right? 4 organizations that give free doula support, but each in a different way with a different focus to a different community, basically, right? So Black Mamas ATX, obvious. Black birth givers in Central Texas, right? We have Healing Hands Community Doula Project. Darlene is an expert and a well-respected expert in our community in doula and workforce development and doula training and even working with high-risk pregnancies. That's a special skill in the doula world, right? And so that organization is part of the group. We have Mama Sana Vibrant Woman, an organization that is a decade plus in Austin, the oldest one in our community that provides free doula support for Black and brown folks, Mama Sana, a vibrant woman, right? And that organization has a different structure, a different way that they do things, and they were founded by community organizers and bring that that organizer perspective, right? I think radical is a good thing, but I had to check myself because apparently not everybody thinks radical is a good thing. They are radical in the best possible way, all right? And then we have GALS, which is short for Giving Austin Labor Support. Cute name, right? They provide emergency doula support, right? If you're in the hospital, on the way to the hospital, and you realize you're gonna need a doula, they have an on-call service. They also have just started something that none of us had, a postpartum only doula support, right? Now, these 4 organizations hopped on a call in 2020, and that call happened because of COVID. And because we realized the hospitals were not letting anyone into the room when someone was going into labor because of COVID. And we know how dangerous that environment can be, being in hospital by yourself. And for those of us who are working with Black birth givers, as a Black woman or Black pregnant person by yourself in a hospital during a pandemic emergency, right? So you're already usually not their priority, you're especially not their priority. And there's no one there to advocate for you, there's no one there to listen to you, there's no one there to support you, not even your doula. Got on this call, there was a lot of birth workers on this call, and we met the next week, and we met the next week. And it boiled down to these 4 organizations that have been on the ground in the community doing this work, providing doula support in our different ways. And 2 parent support organizations joined us. Partners in Parenting, they provide parent support groups for new parents, and Hand to Hold, which supports NICU babies and families. If your baby ends up in the NICU, they're available to support, all right? So this collaborative is part of that community building. We, with our back then 2 doulas, now 4 doulas, still very proud, we can support everybody in the community. Before COVID, the work of many community organizations had been siloed. We're not working together, not talking together. If you mention one, people ask you about the other one, right? Now, we have created this community of organizations where we center our own humanity and the humanity of the communities we work with and the people we work with. We have created a space that is actively intended to, what's the word I'm looking for? To not be the norm. We're doing something different, right? We are not following the white supremacy ideologies that are ingrained in society, in the way organizations are forced to run. We do everything with an anti-racist lens, and we center the Black community, because if we could fix the system if we could create a system that works for the Black community, obviously it's gonna work for everybody, right? So this work is part of that community building. And community is a huge part of resilience, and this is what the pandemic taught us in Austin, Central Texas. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, although I didn't have it on the slide because I was planning to just talk. Y'all wasn't gonna get nothing. But then she changed my mind. I figured I'd give you visuals. But yes. So last but not least is the structural work, right? Yes, most of our focus is on hands-on with our community, right? But also from the from the beginning, Black Mamas ATX knew there had to be this structural side to what we do. We did not create these disparities, and doulas are not the solution to the problem, because the problem wasn't lack of doulas that created this disparity. It was systemic racism, right? Implicit bias, healthcare systems that do not listen to us and that are dangerous to us and harmful to us in many ways, right? So we will do our work in our community. That's the survival work. But structural work is crucial and will remain crucial. So Black Mamas ATX, say I think it was 2019, was our first major stepping into, we started in 2018, but we stepped into the structural work in 2019 when, during that Texas legislative session that year, we had a rally on the Capitol talking about just to bring awareness to the Black maternal mortality and morbidity situation. So that bottom picture is from there. Actually, fun fact. Over here, this person right here, all the way up? Yeah. Right. That's Erin. She was a intern back then. She was in UT. Now, she finished UT, did a master's, and now she's our grant manager. She was on that second slide. But yes, that was just a fun fact and aside. So that was also coupled with an education session where we were helping educate representatives about this issue, right? Other ways that we push for structural change. Now, 2020 came and we focused entirely on survival, but other ways that we do and continue to push structural change, speaking on panels in spaces where there are decision makers in the room about what we do and this movement. Education via social media about reproductive justice, and just never shutting up. But since MHEC, we've been able to amplify, because now we are a whole collaborative of 6 or effective, impactful, grassroots organizations, and we're all on the same page on a lot of these things. So most recently, the issue we've been dealing with in Texas is the state mandated a maternal mortality and morbidity review committee. And they're supposed to review the deaths that have taken place and report out on that. Now, this is in a law, right? They have to report out on that every 2 years on September 1st, all right? This year, they would have been getting information from that, remember that 2014, 2013 stuff? Between 2015 up to 2019, they were catching up on the data. And then September 1st, 2nd came around, and they did not release it. Even the committee themselves, who were to release this report with recommendations, and this is the first report that had a discrimination tool that the CDC created to identify discrimination, right? It's the first year that tool was being used in this review process. Yeah, so that was not released. Then we had elections, like, what was last week? And then, so it was not released. Despite the legal expectations for it to be released, despite the need for this data to be able to know how to direct our efforts and where to direct our efforts, And despite us going to the Capitol and being loud, right? Again, and speaking out, Kay was there, right? This work still continues, and it is frustrating, and it is a long road in Texas, and we have a lot to do, which means we will never get bored. But that's another part of what I see being part of resilience, because resilience is nice. Resilience is the survival work, right? We need to get past where communities that have been historically oppressed, deprived, ignored, neglected, abused, right? These communities are still here. That's resilience, and that is the definition of resilience, right? And we need to get past that point where that is not enough, where resilience is not enough, right? Because what ends up being the cycle is you keep doing survival work, structures don't change, keep doing the survival work. It's a cycle that is not going to end, and the survival work, I don't know a good term that isn't training, spinning top in mud. You're spinning a top in the mud, you're not getting anywhere, right? So the structural work is something that needs to be done so that resilience doesn't have to happen. So that people could just live and thrive and have joy and be well, because we are in a place that allows that and doesn't actively work against that, right? And so that is where structural work comes in, and why, as much as resilience is important and building resilience by what we do on the ground is important, we can't only focus on that. That structural work has to happen, because somebody said it earlier, we deserve better. That is it. Thank you. You can contact me. You can follow us on the Insta. You can go on blackmamasatx.com, and if you're anywhere in the 5-county metro area, you can request a doula. And if you're not in that 5-county metro area, you could still join our sister circle and be part of the online aspect of it. Thank you.
All right.
Questions?
Any questions?
Hi, my name is Dominique, part of Vital Village. My question to you is the distance.
Yeah. Mileage reimbursements.
That's what I thought.
They drive. If they have to drive. COVID taught us that we could do some of our visits virtually. So we still do some of our visits virtually. And then at least one of those visits is going to have to be in person, because you're teaching hands-on things as a doula to prepare the person for birth. So, yeah. Texas is not a transport-friendly place. Austin, not even Austin. It's not as bad as some places, but it's not the East Coast. So, yeah, our doulas, everybody having your own car is a huge thing, and it's an access issue, and it's a health issue. It's a social determinant of health. But our doulas drive all over, as far as San Marcos, which is a whole other city, but it's still yeah. We've reached out as far as Kelenne.
Wow.
But yes, was that the whole question, or?
No, that was great. Thank you so
Okay.
much. How come you don't have as much doulas, or how are you recruiting them, or how are they coming to you? And have any of the families?
Oh, okay. So we do something a little different in terms of the fact that we employ our doulas full time with benefits. That's, yeah. So we can only have however many full-time doulas as we can afford as a small organization. That's a benefit to our doulas. We're working on improving their wage, but they have a steady wage. They have a salary and they have mileage reimbursement and benefits and that sort of thing, which is hard in this field of work actually to get. And yeah, the disadvantage is that we don't have that many doulas, but when we can serve somebody, Mama Sana, Healing Hands, gals, step in where needed, and that's the beauty of the community. So.
Any other questions for Kelenne?
I sit on the Washington State Maternal Mortality Review, so I'm like, I want to talk to you later. And I appreciate your framing around that because it's like the bar is so low for Black and Indigenous community. It's like, don't die, right? Like keep people alive. And that is such a low bar. And so we talk a lot in our conversations of like, what are our dreams for our community? Like, how can we set the bar higher than just like not being dead? Because we deserve way more than that. So I'm curious, like, what is your big vision or your radical dreaming for your communities?
Ooh. Big vision, radical dreaming. Yeah. MHEC is good at that. That's how we move. Black Mamas ATX. Here's our big vision. Once we get to a sustainable point locally where we're serving, everybody we can, and nobody's passes, what's the word? Slip through the net. Thank you, slip through the cracks. We call ourselves Black Mamas ATX for a reason. Because then at some point, we're going to be in HTX, or we're going to be in, FWTX, or SATX, or, I don't know, GMS. I don't know, I'm coming up with random things, right? Boston, right? So we will be all over the place, right? That's the big dream. But there's smaller things we want to get right where we are as well. And then we will be like, all right, let's see if we can replicate this in a local way in another space. So but the big dream for the MHEC, because, a Voltron is, or a group of people, is more powerful than the individual, right? So MHEC, what you spoke about, me and Darlene looked at each other, a physical perinatal safe zone, a physical space, a building, whatever form that takes, with a birth center, right, where all of us can provide the supports that we do, the things that we do best. The biggest picture, which is in our mission at Black Mamas ATX, is to eventually eliminate the maternal health disparity. So yes.
Good question. Any others? We got time for one more, if anyone else has questions.
The other question would be is that what do you think of being able to have doulas come volunteer for you to get the experience, to understand, or how would you go about that, and how would you house them?
We are piloting something kind of like that right now. We have one test subject. She's willing. But actually it's something we discussed as well. The idea of having our doulas as kind of preceptors or having apprenticeships, that is an idea we're piloting in the sense of somewhere along the way. It was 2020. I wasn't ED yet, but Black Mamas ATX had the opportunity to train doulas, to bring a doula trainer who was a Black woman to Austin and do a training. So some of those doulas got certified, but some didn't finish their births because it was 2020. It was February 2020, and then the rest of 2020 happened, right? So one of those folks is a couple births away. So we designed an apprenticeship program where that person is going to shadow one of our doulas to prenatal, postpartum, and births. And we figured out a small stipend because we also believe that Black women doing this work should be compensated, even though we can't give them like a whole salary for doing it. That's how we're shaping it. So the idea that is going to fuel us being able to create something more sustainable that is an apprenticeship that allows doulas to learn community doulaing, right? In Black doulas to learn community doulaing in Black communities with Black clients, which is a whole different picture from what might be typically considered doula work.
Any others? All right. Well, thank you, Kelenne.
I
you
see a
have one?
question over here.
Let me get over there.
Hi, sorry. You kind of talked. Oh.
Don't start with sorry. Yes.
You talked in your presentation about like the importance of like structural change in relation to like maternal health equity. And I'm just wondering, like, as a young person, like in your opinion, like, what are the best ways for like young people to be like more involved in like that kind of like structural change in like regards to this issue?
That's a great question. Thanks for that. And that's the thing I tell everybody, by the way. So many of us start what we're about to say with sorry, apologizing for your existence and your presence or for taking up space. Please, everybody, please, if that's a habit of yours, work it out of your system, because you do not need to apologize for taking up space, for asking questions, for anything. Don't start your sentence with sorry, because you have no reason to be sorry, right? So that's that. Now, to answer the actual question, well, one thing, there's an organization called DTI, Doula Training International. They had teen doula training where the young people got the full training and could become certified to be doulas. Those young people, one of them went back, and I know this because one of the community members of Maternal Health Equity Collaborative works there, but is part of our collaborative as well. And said one of those youth went back and made a doula club in her school and is teaching that information to her peers. And one of those youth wants to be an OB, and that's why they took that. So now this person is gonna actually doula, and she's like 18 maybe. And from doing that doula work, that's part of her pathway to being an OB. And there's other young people. I saw a doula who's 17, already working with clients. So that to say, being a doula is a trade. You don't have to be a certain age to start learning that information or to get certified. So that's one way if you like really want to dive deep into that work. But another way would be following and learning from folks who are doing this work. So like all the organizations on here on social media, maybe not TikTok. And not Twitter no more, because Twitter is imploding. But you find us on like Instagram, you know? And there's just doulas who are also influencers, right? Birth midwives, birth workers who are also influencers. So like if you're interested in that aspect of it, I would say use this wide social world that we have and get that learning. But also it is not too early to actually take a training, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And when you learn something, then, I mean, tell your friends, you know, be active about making sure that the people that you're coming up with are in good shape because like I said, the structures are damaging. And the last thing is that in Texas, in our voting, last voting thing, the group that showed up the most and made the most sensible votes, in my opinion, were Gen Z. All right. So there's that.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Kelenne, for your presentation. All right, everybody. We're going to take a quick 15-minute break. For people out in our virtual world, we'll be back for 3, and we'll have our last presentation of the day.